Hello and welcome to Zodiac Talks Tarot. I'm glad you're here. Settle in, take a breath, and allow a seasoned astrologer and longtime student of human behavior to walk you through what the cosmos has been quietly arranging for you today. As someone who has spent decades tracing planetary patterns, studying social psychology, reading the subtle cues of human interaction, and steeping myself in both the narrative craft of novelists and the gentle discipline of Buddhist practice, I read this moment for Sagittarius as a precise and compassionate turning point. December 4th, 2025 presents itself not as a random flourish of fate but as a carefully timed opening. Imagine a heavy curtain parting to reveal a clearly lit doorway, a pathway to success that asks you to step forward with both your characteristic optimism and a newly tempered patience. I want you to picture your life as a map you have been doodling on in beautiful, chaotic handwriting. Today the map sharpens, routes align, and certain previously vague crossroads gain signposts. Psychologically, this is significant because it shifts you from a reactive, novelty-seeking mode into an oriented, purpose-driven stance. You retain your appetite for adventure, but now your adventures have trajectory and consequence. Spiritually, the crown chakra's whisper becomes audible, your sense of meaning and connection to a larger pattern is clarifying, and those intuitive nudges you often get while driving at 2 a.m. or while losing yourself in a stranger's laugh may contain actionable guidance. Practically, career wins favor recognition and tangible advancement. If you solve complex puzzles or bring creative innovation to routine problems, the wheel of fortune is turning in a way that will make others notice the quiet competence behind your easy charm. Love and relationships soften into deeper possibility. The Lovers and Ten of Cups archetypes suggest that vulnerability, which you sometimes treat like a rare collectible, will reward you with genuine connection rather than the temporary thrill you often mistake for intimacy. Financially, a cycle closes and a new one begins. Think of it as clearing a table and setting down a sturdier plate. Opportunities appear for realignment rather than quick fixes, so apply your optimism where discipline meets strategy. Humorously, because you are Sagittarius and we both know you need to laugh at yourself to keep from combusting, expect at least one absurd moment today, like suddenly feeling moved to start 5 new projects and then immediately forgetting where you put the list. Treat that as a reminder to channel enthusiasm into one clear next step. From a Buddhist-informed perspective, this is a moment to respond rather than react, to hold curiosity and compassion together so that your freedom does not become avoidance and your independence does not harden into isolation. I would advise simple practices, brief pauses before important conversations, gentle attention to posture to relieve the tension that holds your insights in the shoulders, and a small ritual of gratitude each evening to anchor the day's gains. The invitation is clear: claim the map, take the step, keep your wonder, and let your humor light the way. The cosmos is not handing you a guarantee so much as a set of aligned conditions, and in your hands those conditions become a pathway to success that feels as much like fulfillment as like fate. Today brings a particular kind of awakening for Sagittarius, the kind that rises not with fanfare but with a quiet, unmistakable shift in your awareness, much like realizing halfway through a conversation that the universe has been trying to get your attention all week. In the language of spiritual psychology, your crown chakra is opening, and this center governs not just intuition but the deeper architecture of meaning, how you connect the dots of your life, how you understand purpose beyond daily tasks, and how you sense the larger story unfolding beneath ordinary moments. For a sign ruled by Jupiter, the planet that expands everything it touches, your curiosity, your restlessness, your ability to philosophize about breakfast cereal, this kind of awakening lands with unusual force. It feels less like a gentle nudge and more like a cosmic spotlight turning on at exactly the moment you were pretending not to look for answers. And in my years of studying both astrology and human behavior, I've noticed a pattern. Sagittarius rarely finds clarity in silence. You find it while moving, questioning, creating, pacing, driving at an hour when only poets and people avoiding responsibility are awake. Insight tends to break through when your body is in motion and your mind is distracted, which is perhaps why your great revelations happen in the shower or mid-grocery run. So don't pressure yourself to meditate like a monk. Let truth catch up to you the way it always does, swiftly, unexpectedly, and with a flair that is entirely your own. This awakening also signals an emotional alignment, a subtle but steady warmth entering your life. You may not admit it, because Sagittarius prides itself on independence, but you have been quietly hoping for a connection that feels both expansive and safe, a love that doesn't cage you but still feels like a place to land. Something about this energy suggests that such a connection is forming, not through dramatic fireworks but through grounded familiarity, the kind that makes your heart soften before your mind can protest. Pay attention to the small signs, a feather showing up where it shouldn't, numbers repeating enough to feel suspicious, a moment of déjà vu so strong it gives your intuition goosebumps. These are not directives or warnings, they are reflections of your internal alignment, gentle echoes reminding you that you are stepping into a chapter where your inner world and outer experiences finally begin to match. This is not coincidence. This is coherence. And Sagittarius, you are waking up right on time. Sagittarius stands at a fascinating psychological crossroads right now, and as someone who has spent decades studying both the zodiac and the subtle mechanics of human behavior, I can say that few signs evolve quite as dramatically or as entertainingly as you do. Social psychology claims that people reinvent themselves every few years, but Sagittarius has always treated identity like a wardrobe. You try on new versions of yourself as casually and frequently as changing jackets, sometimes switching personalities before breakfast if inspiration hits. Yet this month feels fundamentally different. The shifts you're experiencing aren't impulsive or experimental, they have weight and direction. Something in you is consolidating, grounding, clarifying. It's as if the multiple paths you've wandered over the years are beginning to converge into a single, coherent road, and for once you're not sprinting ahead just to see what happens, you're moving with intention. In countless astrological charts I've analyzed over the years, I've noticed that when Jupiter forms harmonious aspects to one's personal planets, Sagittarians undergo a particular kind of transformation. You shift out of the breezy why not phase and step bravely into the why not me era. It's no longer about chasing curiosity simply because it calls your name, it becomes about stepping into opportunities because you finally recognize you've earned them. This is the kind of psychological maturation that feels subtle day to day but undeniable when you look back. Professionally, the impact is unmistakable. The Wheel of Fortune appears strongly in your energetic field right now, and that's not a symbol I invoke lightly. It signals not just good luck but a meaningful turn of events, an upward shift in visibility, acknowledgement, and momentum. If your work involves puzzles of any kind, creative, analytical, technological, emotional, you are entering a period where your natural brilliance becomes impossible to overlook. People who once dismissed you as too spontaneous, too humorous, or too unpredictable are starting to realize they misread you. Beneath your easy laughter and adventurous restlessness is a mind that synthesizes information faster than most people can articulate their thoughts. Sagittarius intelligence doesn't move in straight lines, it leaps, arcs, ricochets, and somehow lands exactly where it needs to. I often describe it as diagonal thinking. You bypass the clutter and see connections others don't even know exist. To outsiders it looks like luck. To those who understand you, it's clear that your mind simply works at a different altitude. But part of what makes this moment so meaningful is the internal shift you're experiencing. The Five of Pentacles appears as a quiet shadow in your reading, not a current reality, but a residue from the past. This card reflects an old narrative you've carried far too long, the belief that you must handle everything alone. Sagittarius independence is legendary. You pride yourself on your ability to navigate life without leaning on anyone, partly because you hate feeling beholden and partly because you've built an identity around self-reliance. But independence, when misunderstood, can easily turn into emotional isolation disguised as strength. Psychological studies reveal that true independence isn't the absence of support, it's the confidence to seek support without feeling diminished by it. Vulnerability isn't a trap, and it certainly isn't a loss of freedom. It is a bridge that leads you toward deeper connection and richer self-understanding. And this is where your current transformation shines brightest. You're stepping out of the emotional cold, not with fanfare, but with a quiet recognition that resilience doesn't always have to be sharp or defensive. Your strength is softening into something wiser and more sustainable, an inner calm that allows you to stand firmly without bracing yourself for impact. You're learning that allowing others to walk with you doesn't slow your journey, it steadies your steps. And Sagittarius, THA. Sagittarius has always had a natural relationship with beginnings, so when the Fool appears in your reading today, it does not arrive as a surprise so much as a confirmation. If the Zodiac held a contest for most likely to leap before looking, you would win by a landslide and probably accept the award while already boarding a plane to somewhere new. You were born wired for adventure, for reinvention, for that intoxicating blend of risk and curiosity that makes other signs nervous but makes you feel alive. I've observed this pattern for decades, watching how Sagittarians can pack a suitcase in 5 minutes, make a life-changing decision over lunch, and treat new experiences like oxygen. But today's energy is more nuanced. The Fool in this moment does not represent reckless spontaneity, instead, it marks a shift toward purposeful courage. This is not an escape or a distraction. This is clarity. This is direction. You're moving towards something that feels meaningful, something that draws you forward with a magnetic pull rather than pushing you away from what you're leaving behind. From a psychological standpoint, this is the moment when impulsivity transforms into intuition. You may find yourself suddenly compelled to start a project you've delayed for months or sent off a job application with the distinct sense that it's going somewhere. You might reach out to someone you've been thinking about or sketch a plan for a trip without understanding why it feels significant yet instinctively knowing it is. And yes, at least once today, your intuition will whisper so loudly that you stop mid-step, as if your inner compass is recalibrating in real time. Where the Fool initiates the journey, the star illuminates it. And the star, in all its quiet brilliance, arrives like the universe leaning down to reassure you that your recent glimmers of hope are not delusions, they are evidence. In my years of chart analysis, counseling, and observing the emotional rhythms of this fire sign, I've learned that Sagittarius doesn't heal in slow increments. You heal in leaps. You don't tiptoe back into optimism, you rocket into it. After periods of doubt or disillusionment, your spirit rebounds with such force that people around you feel encouraged without knowing why. There is something undeniably uplifting about a Sagittarius who believes again. The star reflects this energy beautifully. It brings renewal not because circumstances magically fix themselves, but because your perspective rises above the noise. Sagittarius is most powerful when you zoom out, when you step into that philosophical vantage point where life's chaos rearranges into patterns. This card signals that you are reconnecting with that higher view. And let me add a professional observation: Sagittarius optimism is not careless or childish. It is strategic. It is a psychological mechanism refined through experience, a survival tool disguised as enthusiasm. You don't deny the darker realities of life, you simply choose not to take up residence in them. You know that shadows are temporary, that momentum returns, that purpose evolves. You understand, perhaps better than most, that cynicism freezes the spirit while optimism keeps it moving. This returning hope is not a fantasy, it is an internal alignment with your own resilience. Today, the Fool and the Star work together to push you forward and lift you upward. A courageous beginning meets a healing light. A leap intersects with guidance. A new chapter opens not out of impulse but out of wisdom. And Sagittarius, if there were ever a moment to trust both your fire and your intuition, this is it. When the Lover's card appears for Sagittarius, it rarely arrives as a simple nod toward romance. Instead, it surfaces as a profound invitation to emotional bravery, the kind that requires a sign as freedom-driven and complexity-seeking as you to pause long enough to admit that connection matters just as much as independence. In my decades of studying astrology, psychology, and the intricate ways human attachment shapes our decisions, I've found that Sagittarius embodies one of the great paradoxes of the zodiac. You crave freedom with the same intensity others crave stability, yet you long quietly, privately, almost embarrassingly for a connection deep enough to feel like home. You want independence, but not loneliness, intimacy, but not obligation, companionship, but never a cage. Sagittarius needs room to breathe, to roam, to reinvent, and yet you also want someone who understands your wildness instead of resisting it. That is the tension the Lover's card exposes. The choice between self-protection and the possibility of emotional fulfillment. This card suggests that someone meaningful is entering or returning to your energetic landscape. Their presence challenges you not by restricting your movement but by matching your stride. They do not ask you to fold your wings, they ask to fly beside you, which is a dynamic that often startles Sagittarius because it undermines your favorite defense mechanism, the belief that no one can keep up with you. Yet this kind of connection only becomes real if you choose vulnerability. Sagittarius vulnerability is a rare gemstone, hard to find, harder to maintain, but when it surfaces, it transforms not just the relationship but your entire emotional worldview. You begin to see that openness does not weaken your fire, it refines it. And from a psychological standpoint, vulnerability for Sagittarius is not simply an emotional act but a developmental milestone. It signals that you're letting go of outdated fears and trusting your intuition to guide you toward deeper meaning. The Ten of Cups expands this theme beyond romance and into the broader realms of family and belonging. This card signals harmony in the emotional networks that support you, whether that means your biological family, your chosen spiritual family, or the group of friends who tolerate your philosophical tangents at 2 in the morning. In my years of studying family systems and generational cycles, I've found that Sagittarius frequently becomes the cycle breaker within their lineage. You are the one who speaks truths others avoid, who introduces humor where tension thickens, and who calls out problems not to stir conflict but to clear space for healing. Today, your presence alone has the power to shift a long-standing pattern, perhaps through a single compassionate conversation or simply by offering a perspective that reframes an old wound. You may not always see yourself as the emotional anchor of the family, but the Ten of Cups suggests that your insight and warmth ripple further than you realize. Then arrives the King of Cups, a symbol of emotional maturity that can either represent a person entering your life or a new emotional milestone within yourself. This card reflects steadiness, balance, and the ability to respond to emotional currents with clarity rather than reactivity. For Sagittarius, emotional maturity seldom appears as a slow climb, it comes in waves, sudden yet unmistakable. This week marks one of those waves. You are moving into a deeper understanding of your own emotional landscape, recognizing your triggers, and learning how to stand firmly without bracing for imaginary storms. When Sagittarius becomes grounded emotionally, the transformation is astonishing. Your fire, which can flare unpredictably when you're overwhelmed, becomes intentional, focused, and incredibly powerful. You become the kind of person who inspires confidence in others, even those who once doubted your consistency. Finally, your physical well-being steps into the picture. The tension gathering in your shoulders, neck, or head is not random, it's the bodily echo of emotional weight. Sagittarius moves quickly mentally, emotionally, physically, and your body often ends up playing catch-up. The tightness you feel is less about physical strain and more about the psychic load you've been carrying without acknowledging it. Adjusting your posture, taking deliberate breaths, stretching, or simply slowing down for a moment could prevent discomfort from intensifying in the days ahead. And if you're going to have another existential revelation, which, let's be honest, is likely, at least hydrate before you start questioning the meaning of your entire life. In all these areas, love, family, emotional growth, and health, the theme is the same. You are being asked to soften, to trust, to open. Not because you are weak, but because you are finally strong enough to. In the professional realm, Sagittarius finally steps into a cycle where recognition arrives not as a surprise, but as the natural outcome of work you've been quietly shaping for months, perhaps years. Mars is fueling your career sector with an energy that is equal parts determination and clarity, giving you the push to rise above old limitations and speak your ambitions aloud. As someone who has studied the psychological patterns of this fire sign for decades, I've often noticed that Sagittarius shines brightest when purpose and structure intersect, when the work is meaningful, but also organized enough to channel your natural brilliance instead of letting it scatter like cosmic confetti. This month brings exactly that combination. Your ideas are being noticed, your persistence is being acknowledged, and if you've been waiting for a promotion, a raise, or a long-delayed breakthrough, you're standing at that threshold now. Even those who once underestimated you are beginning to tune in. And if you're job-seeking, you can expect movement, real opportunities that feel aligned with who you are, not just what you must settle for. Financially, the storyline mirrors that growth. You're entering the first stretch of an upward curve, closing out an old cycle of uncertainty and stepping into a phase where new prospects begin to open. A risk becomes possible and, if handled wisely, profitable. But here's the humorous psychological twist. Emotional spending looms in the background, waiting for you to wander into a store on a bad day and suddenly decide that scented candles or a new jacket are the solution to all existential problems. Do yourself a favor and avoid impulse buys that serve as temporary emotional bandages. Spend only when you're grounded, not when you're avoiding something. Let your money reflect clarity, not chaos. Communication today is electrified. The moon's trine to Jupiter charges your words with honesty, charisma, and that distinctive Sagittarius ability to be direct without being unkind. This is an excellent day for conversations that matter, discussions that shift relationships, job prospects, or personal direction. Say what you mean with compassion and confidence. Your truth carries weight now. It may surprise you how open others are to your perspective when you speak from sincerity rather than urgency. Now, because no Sagittarius reading is complete without acknowledging the delightful chaos you bring to daily life, let's take a light-hearted detour into your typical patterns. Today you might find yourself starting 5 new projects simultaneously simply because the inspiration hit, and you'll genuinely enjoy juggling all of them. You may discover the meaning of life while washing dishes or folding laundry, because your epiphanies tend to arrive at the least glamorous moments. You might tell a friend you'll keep it short before delivering a 20-minute monologue about personal growth, the state of the universe, and why you've decided that now is the perfect time to start learning pottery. You might buy yet another self-development book even though 16 others are sitting half-read on your nightstand. And, of course, there is always that famous 2 a.m. burst of inspiration that convinces you to reorganize your life, your future, your budget, or your entire personality. If any of these sound familiar, congratulations, your Sagittarius passport has been officially renewed. In relationship dynamics today, compatibility is strongest with Capricorn, who brings a grounding steadiness you didn't know you needed, Virgo, whose practical motivation harmonizes with your current drive, and Libra, who offers a gentle, balanced flow of conversation and connection. As the day comes to a close, the universe gently encourages you to move slowly and shine brightly. Your energy feels stretched, not exhausted, but extended. This is a time to rest your mind, recalibrate your direction, and allow your inner fire to burn warmly instead of wildly. Your kindness will make an impact today. Your presence will soothe tension. Your wisdom will open doors you didn't even realize were waiting for you. Avoid pretending not to care. It's a habit that does nothing but distance you from what you actually want. And resist withdrawing when overwhelmed. Instead, move forward with intention, gentleness, and clarity. This is a day not of chaos, but of alignment. A day where purpose feels attainable. A day where success doesn't look like a distant dream but a path beneath your feet. Sagittarius, breathe it in. Step into it. Let yourself enjoy it. And if today's guidance brought you clarity or comfort, I invite you to support this growing community. Like the video, share the message with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Zodiac Talks Tarot so we can continue exploring the cosmos together. Your journey matters here. Every step, every insight, every spark of your fire,